Good evening and welcome to Friday Night with Friends. It's an honor to be here with you all. And Ruth Lanciano, you can see over to I'm not sure whether she's my left or right on this screen. She's to my left. Many of you familiar with Ruth from our in our local area here. But before I jump into that, I just want to welcome you all. If you're a first time guest, thank you so much for joining us tonight. If you're a regular, thank you for holding the fort down. We appreciate your faithfulness. I know I've said that several times, but we really do appreciate your faithfulness. Friday Night with Friends is where we just literally have a conversation with friends. And tonight, I hope Ruth and I are not too giggly, but she's got a great story, and we wanted to bring that to you tonight. But listen, if you want to know anything about us, remember, always go to newarkupc.info. And if you can't find what you need there, you can always contact us, literally on the contact us card, and ask a specific question. But everything, I think pretty much you need to know, especially during this time of COVID when we're not in service, is there for you. So be sure to stop over there and check us out. But as I mentioned, we are here with Ruth Lanciano tonight. If you guys don't know how we met Ruth, you have to correct my story if I have it wrong, but I know the connection is through Steve, her husband, Steve Lanciano, who used to be a Bible quizzer with our pastor, Steve. And so there's a long time history there. Ruth, however, is originally from Venezuela. So you'll be, and actually that's what we're going to talk about tonight, specifically with her. We're going to talk about her growing up in Venezuela until about the age 9. And how she ended up here in America and her story there related to the church and segue over here. It's a funny story. I think there's lots of funny stories in there. And so we're going to just let it, we'll let it flow tonight. And again, this is a casual evening. It's meant to be casual, but we are just talking among friends. So Ruth, if you'd like to take a moment and greet the viewers, please do so. And we'll jump in from there.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you guys. I watch you guys often, very, very often. And so I feel super special being asked to talk about my experience of growing up in Venezuela. And actually the connection with Pastor Stephen and Steve, my husband, goes way back. He reminded me today that he thinks that Pastor Stephen Beersley was there when he got the Holy Ghost at 8.5.
Really?
Yes, because they used to put their Bibles like on the first row and then go play and then like save their seats in the first row. Mm-hmm. And so that he got the Holy Ghost about 8.5. So, very much childhood friends, I guess. And Bible quizzing also connected them. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here tonight.
That's great. Right now, both Ruth and Steve are members of Greater Philadelphia. Let me see if I get that right. Greater Philadelphia. Pastor Joel Barnaby there. And Ruth and Steve and her family do fellowship there. And they are definitely, again, friends of the Newark Church. And again, we're honored to have her here tonight. So Ruth, I'm going to let you tell the story, and I'm going to try not to interrupt too much because I want you to get as much out of the story as possible. Ruth and I met ahead of time, and we actually had fun just kind of going through her story there. And so I'll interject at various points. But why don't you start off and tell us about your growing up in the church in Philadelphia and some of those experiences there.
Mm-hmm. Growing up in Venezuela.
In Venezuela, yes.
So I'm originally from Venezuela. And my parents are actually Colombian. So I grew up very much with the Colombian culture alive. They migrated to Venezuela in the 70s. At that time, there's just a lot of violence and poverty in Colombia. So they came as singles to Venezuela, which is to the east. And they met there and they got married there in 76. They got married in the church where I grew up and was there until the age of 9. And I think Erica has a picture of where Venezuela is, just basic geography here. We're at the top of South America, and I was born in Caracas, which is the capital at the very tippy top. So there's beautiful beaches there. There's our flag, and there is a beautiful beach picture too somewhere, Erica. that I took when Steve and I went back when we've been married 4 years. I just wanted to go let him see a crystal clear beach.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A
So
far cry from the beaches here on the East Coast. For sure.
yeah, that was a little disappointing. We went to a beach in Jersey, and I was like, "What?"
It's just a mud hole. Sorry, Jersey folks, I had to say it, but that was my experience when I end up at Rehoboth. I'm like, you guys call this a beach? Sorry.
But I've learned to love the beach even in Jersey. We go every summer, so I'm not like a beach snob or anything. So my parents, I'm a middle child. Have an older sister and a younger brother. There's a picture of us having dinner, us 5. Yep, and that's actually a church dinner at a very prestigious hotel that we were not used to. We were a very humble means. And so, but this
is that you in the middle, Ruth, with your arm around your mom?
Yep, that's my mom, and that's my sister Aaliyah, and then my dad and my brother Arnold eating a piece of bread. Yeah.
Nice.
So we grew up in the church. We lived in a mountainous urban area where a lot of shanty towns form. Because people are in search of work and in search of a better future, like my parents were, and a lot of poverty and very humble means, but there is a beautiful church there. There's a church where I was born, and the Campoys were the pastors there. There's a picture of that as well. And there they are. And they mean so much to me. I got to see them. I've seen them a few times. Steve has gone back to spend time with them as well. And this is in front of their church, about 3 hours from the Capitol. They've since moved from the church where I was born and where they pastored our family, and moved to La Victoria. And they're just awesome people. He's very much a teacher. He very much highlighted education as something that he wanted us all to get better, to improve our lives. He saw education as a channel to do that. And I remember a picture on chalkboard, and I share this with Sister Leela, of 3 different trees, because he had like a series that he was doing, I guess with the adults, because I don't think I was allowed there. We were in Sunday school. But he had 3 different trees, and he had like a bare tree and a middle like tree sort of growing some leaves, and then a very abundant, rich, fruitful tree. And I remember that picture was there for a while, enough for me to notice. Mm-hmm. And I remember me thinking, I want that life. I want to be like that tree.
That tree was the fruitful, abundant tree.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Ruth, can I interrupt for a second?
Sure.
How did your family come to the church? So your parents were always in the church, or did they come to a church later in life?
There's a lady in the pictures too. Her name is Mama Lola. And she was like the only mother figure that my mom had. And she helped raise us all, not just my siblings, but like every kid in the church, every kid in the neighborhood. And she started talking to my mom as a teenager about the Lord, and sort of like bringing her in with her sisters too, because my mom has 2 sisters, and sort of like guiding her, shepherding her. I guess being the mother, that my mom needed. And from then on, I think that's when my mom started following the Lord and seeking him. And then my dad, he tells me about times where he was in Colombia and would visit a church there and things like that. But I think things took root through Mama Lola, which was the lady that helped us raised us all. That's why we call her Mama, Mama Lola.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were talking about Brother Campoy and how he was big into education.
Yeah. And so there in his church, eventually he himself put himself through school, and he himself studied law and became a judge and very much a family advocate now. As he was pastoring, and he started, I think they started pastoring in another congregation, and then they quickly came to Peña Tovar, which is where I was at, and they started pastoring like at 23, and they had two beautiful kids. They now live in Chile, and just learned, like, lived his life in front of us, raising kids, going to school, pastoring. So they're sort of my heroes. I have a very, just have a lot of appreciation for him, and him bettering himself, but also encouraging us to better ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about, you really got my attention when you talked about the way children were viewed and the expectation of children in the church growing up. I thought I was pretty impressed with that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I had a Sunday school teacher, and there's a picture of her too. I was digging through pictures like crazy because I'm like, I gotta talk about these people. So that is my Sunday school teacher there. Her name is Rebecca, and that's her husband, Roa, I think is their last name. So you can kind of tell. I know the picture's old, but she has a beautiful smile, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember even the way she walked. She was just such a confident, and she was not graduate. I know that she hadn't graduated high school, so she was between 15, 17 years old. But she was very confident and very like a go-getter. She had the most beautiful smile, and you just took notice when she walked in the room, even though she was pretty short. She was the oldest of three girls. I think she came from a single parent home, because I just remember her mom, La Hermana Carmelina was her name, and I don't remember a dad in the picture. So she was our Sunday school teacher, and she took us in. She took on her Sunday school class. She perceived us as contributors. She didn't like talk down to us like, oh, little kids. She would just assign parts. She kind of like facilitated kids' church. Now we use that word a lot, facilitate, but really she said like, okay, so and so's going to preach next Sunday. We're all under 10, okay? Yeah. So and so is going to preach. Who's doing the songs? Who's doing the hymns? So and so is doing, collecting offering. What do you guys want to? What do you guys want to do to fundraise? I remember my Sheaves for Christ. No lie, I remember my Sheaves for Christ, like piggy bank, like my little. And I was like, I gotta put money in there because my Sunday school teacher wants us to put money in there. And so she just talked to us as contributors, and she was just so special. She influenced my life in a big way. She didn't baby us. I'm sure she taught, I'm not saying she didn't teach something. She did, but she definitely shared the responsibility with us and made us feel like you're a part of this. There's a picture of a Sunday school, Erica. I don't know if you can flash it up there. Yep. So my brother is laughing in the back, the one with the big cheesy smile. That's my brother. Right. And the girl in the front with the glasses, that's the pastor's daughter. And I can remember certain other faces from this picture. I myself, I'm not in this picture, but my brother was there. And you can't tell that much, but this is the roof of the church. So we were on the 3rd floor. The pastor lived on the 2nd floor, and the sanctuary was on the 1st floor.
Oh.
So
All in one.
All in one, right? And you know, I just remember lots of kids. I remember lots of events, plays, like I said, fundraising, church services, and we had a part in that. I think there's a picture of a wedding, Erica, as well, and you can see the inside of the church there. And this touched my heart the other as I was thinking about this because, yeah, because that's a wedding. And
Oh.
you can see the bride. Yeah, you can see the ribbons. We do a lot with ribbons and balloons. And in the very back, you can see on the bottom left there the altar. You know, and I remember that was a cement altar, and I remember praying there and like wanting to know God there. You know, and there's we were definitely a part of the church. There's another picture of me. I think it's another wedding picture on an itchy wedding bridesmaid's dress.
That's most itchy.
So, okay, we're near the equator. Okay, it is hot. It's hot. And this is a pretty dress. You can tell the girls behind me, you know, the like the maid of honor has the pink one. Woo. But they were so itchy, and we were in wedding after wedding after wedding with these dresses. And I'm like, oh, I just want to grow out of this thing because
you want to be the bride, so you don't have to be those itchy bridesmaid dresses anymore.
Yeah. And the thing is that because I have an older sister, I get the hand-me-downs, you know. Yeah. I can't get out as quickly of the clothes I don't like. So yeah, so we were very much involved, and I have just beautiful memories. There were two main trips that we took as a church, and one of them was church camp, and I have several pictures of that, and then the national convention. And so if you want, I can talk about that.
Yeah. I also want to get
look at these are the saints. Yeah, these are the church.
Ooh, wow.
Letters. And you can tell somebody's there at the top preaching or speaking. So I am so glad that I was not a mom. Yeah.
Rude question. So would you consider would this be like maybe our equivalent of a district convention, or would this be more like a national thing in terms of size? Or
that's a good question. So from my recollection, I think this was a church camp, and I think they used to have maybe two nationally or three. And you know, people would pack their tents. It was rough. Like, I'm glad I was not an adult. I'm glad I was not a mom. I'm glad I was just a kid running around. Like, where's the church bus? I'll get on the church bus, and that's all I had to worry about. People had to pack tents, pack their own pots, their own utensils.
Own pots?
Yes. There's a picture of them cooking. That's my mom in the back with a yellow thing. Yeah, you see that pot?
Wow. So somebody was making a fire outside. You had the spit going with the pot hanging.
Yeah, so that's probably like a big pot of soup or something that they were making, and you can tell they're roughing it. I don't know if you can see on my screen is on the left. I think that's like a tent, and you are responsible for bringing your own tent and setting it up. Yeah. And I remember some of the ladies making cachapas, which is it's like a cornmeal pancake sort of thing. And oh, you know, I'm just dying to have one. Church, in the earlier picture, church, we had like starting times for church, but we didn't have really ending times for church.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, you just went to bed when you prayed through. So
was this camp multi-days? Was it over?
Yeah, so we did it during Semana Santa, which is called Holy Week. It's like around the carnival and the Mardi Gras times. And so the saints would just gather, and we would call it retreats. So it's like a retiro. It's a retreat from life and from your usual life.
Yeah.
And they were the best times. Like I remember sitting in a hammock and church was going on, like bah, bah, whatever they were doing over there with the guitars and people praising the Lord. And I was just in a hammock, like with a friend, and just talking, like not a care in the world. Like, this is the best life ever. So yeah, there was a picture of the river. I think that Erica popped up earlier, and that's the river where we where people got baptized. You know, of course, it changed in. Yeah, there you go. You see a bunch of saints. You see banana plants. You see, there's a lady there in the water, and it's up like maybe below her knee a little bit, the water. But of course, there's different depths to a river.
Sure.
People would get baptized there. The ladies went and bathed at a certain time, the men at another time, or you could just skip it until you get home.
Wow.
Yep.
This is Steve. This is what Steve talks about us Americans, you know, and all of our, you know, complaints about things like, you know, come on, people, you know, this. Yeah. I know you guys had fun, but you know, again, you just mentioned there weren't even places to shower and things, and yet you still
not at all. Yeah, not at all. And things, you know, since then they've done things differently. They have church camp somewhere else now. These pictures are from the 70s, so I just want to tell you, I was born in 1980, and these are my parents' photo albums. I wanted to show you. I think that's all as far as the church camp ones go. I wanted to show you about the National Convention. I don't have pictures of the place there, but it was in a place called Barquisimeto, and we would gather in a sort of like a stadium kind of facility. I Googled it recently, and I'm like, how many people can sit there? And it said 10,000. And so at the time when I was there, I'm thinking like 86, 87. We hadn't yet filled that place, but it was happening. Like every year it was growing. And I just remember standing there and looking at the sea of people praising the Lord, and just like, I get to be a part of this. This is the best. Like, wow, this is amazing. And I remember Brother Burton. He's the first missionary that was there from the United Pentecostal Church, and I believe he came in the 60s. There's this picture of his family.
Okay.
Yeah, and his wife, she still lives. She's in Cincinnati, Ohio, and she actually, I listened to her do a series on how the work of the UPC Church got started in Venezuela, and that was very insightful. It seemed like things started in the border with Colombia, which matches my mom's story, because she was coming from Colombia, and she had Mama Lola there in the vicinity, sort of like encouraging her in her walk with God. And so I was like, wow. And she mentioned different key leaders that they invested in, different national leaders that they invested in. And I'm like, yeah, I know exactly what she's talking about. Keep in mind, I'm a child. I left at the age of 9, but in the church, you knew, Pastor so-and-so, or the leader of such and such. And that was amazing. And just looking at this picture, again, I found this in my parents' photos, and I'm like, wow, what is their story? What was their sacrifice?
Sure.
Yeah, and she talked about it a little bit in that series. The way that I got to it was, she's in Brother Tom Ellis's church in Cincinnati, Ohio, and they had a little broadcast where they featured her as a retired missionary, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. This is a treasure.
Wow. So she's still here. Have you connected with her since you've been in the States?
No, I haven't. I did meet up with her. I took my kids to meet her grandson, who's on deputation.
Mm,
And he's currently the missionary in Venezuela.
mm,
I believe he married a native Venezuelan lady, and they have
okay.
two beautiful kids. And on deputation, I wanted my kids to meet the current Venezuelan missionary. I
Uh-huh.
think it's him and his dad, which is brother Lonnie Burton, and and I wanted them to meet, and I wanted my kids to experience that and to see there's people that are still bringing the message of Jesus to Venezuela, and not only that, but equipping leaders. So from what I understand and from my short conversation with him, he's very much involved in the Bible schools and in training pastors and in building a second Bible school. I think they want two in two different areas of the country. So
So Ruth, so you mentioned coming over to the United States at age 9. So
Mhm.
what brought you over to the US, and where did you live initially?
Sure. So I remember my parents, and you can put up the picture of the school, Erica, of my school. That's my elementary school. And when I went there, there was only floor number 1. And I remember my sister being in 7th grade, and I was in starting 4th, and my brother was in 3rd. And I remember my parents like stressing, like, we don't have money for my sister, my oldest sisters. We don't have money for her school supplies.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very much poverty and economic reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to this public school for 1st and for 4th grade. I actually went to Catholic school for 2nd and for 3rd because public school was always on strike.
Really?
Yeah, because the conditions that you have to work in, like they had a morning session for school and an afternoon session. I actually went to school from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. And I remember being afraid at recess because I would go and check the bathrooms like that were in the back of the school, and they were usually locked or not available because of a lack of water. And so I just would be nervous. Like, I hope I don't have to go to the bathroom when I'm in school. Like, you literally start thinking about these things.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I remember my parents talking about that. And my mom and dad had both tried to come to the States in 82 when Venezuela was in a much nicer condition, to say it like that. It was easier to get a visa to the US. And they actually got the visas. But then the person that was going to help them or like take us in, at that time I would have been 2. Things like plans kind of fell through. And so they didn't. But then there was an attempted coup in 89. And there was, I could remember, close to that school, I could remember the gunshots from the military, from the attempted coup.
Oh, wow.
Everything shutting down, and with this COVID restriction thing, we've all experienced lockdown. And I remember those kind of feelings, like you have to stay indoors. People are looting. And so it was that kind of pressure that I think my parents realized, we've got 3 kids, we've got to do something. And so my dad came in 89 of July, and we came in 1990, January of 1990.
So he came ahead of you.
Yeah, and we came straight to Philly because that was where the contact was, the person that was going to like help us initially. And we didn't have a Spanish church, and we didn't speak Spanish. So we would go to church in New York because we knew of a UPC church in New York. Because some of those ministers had gone to the national conference. And so
Wait, Ruth, you said you didn't speak Spanish.
I'm sorry, we didn't speak English.
Oh, okay, I was going to say.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. We didn't speak English. And we didn't have a Spanish church here. So we would hike it to New York, which that was nuts. People that never been driving in New York with my parents. Ooh, Lord.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah. But we would go.
So from Philly to New York, what, every week?
Not every week, I would say maybe every other week. And then it got to the point where that was not sustainable anymore. That was not, and I think my parents realized. We also went to a church in Reading, PA for some time because they had a Spanish church. My dad worked nights at the time in a bakery. And I remember him being depleted, like just completely exhausted. Imagine working all night and then driving to New York or driving to Reading, PA. And then I remember I think my parents just like realized they have 3 teenagers on their hands. And then we came to Greater Church when I was 14. My sister was 17 and my brother was 13.
Oh, so you've been there years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So can you shed a little bit light before we open up the questions? I think I see Erica put the question out that it's, or the notice out that it is time for questions. So if you have a question for Ruth, be sure to preface that with the word question and put that in the chat. But Ruth, you just mentioned something that obviously you came to find a Spanish church. Is that, I know that, for lack of a better way to put it, like people tend to stick together. But as far as you guys coming up, was that strictly for the language? And I know now that the churches are pretty segregated along likenesses. In other words, right now, a lot of Spanish churches stay together and as opposed to, being a part of other congregations, there may be some. Is that, would you say culturally that there's no other issue? It's mainly around language. I'm butchering that question, but
yeah,
it's pretty much language barrier.
I think it's primarily a language thing. I remember, and some churches still do it, and I remember the headphones thing where somebody is translating for you the whole thing. Sometimes I was that person translating after I learned English, and I was like, I don't like this job, especially when it was like somebody preaching and somebody just pulled up a scripture, and I'm like, I don't know how to say that in English, I don't know how to say that in Spanish off the top of my head. So, but yeah, I did some of the translating myself, and my sister did too, and she's done it for many years. But yeah, I think it's the language barrier that sort of does separate people.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's right. All right, Erica. Ruth and I can go on chatting here, but I know there's some questions in the queue. So if you want to come on with us and field some of those questions to Ruth, that would be great.
There's question there. It's the same question 3 times.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Great minds think alike. So all of you put the same question in.
Okay. So, how did you and Steve meet? Googly eyes.
Is that the same question? All right, here we go. All right, babe. We'll talk about it later. So I came to Greater Church, right? And Steve was there. And so we're 9 years apart, people. And he was organizing a youth trip, some kind of youth trip. And I was like, I want to go. Again, that idea of I want to be a part of the church, whatever's going on, I want to be a part of that. It has always very much been with me. And so he was organizing some kind of trip. I can tell you what he was wearing. He was wearing a light blue shirt and a red tie. And he just came and invited us. And I'm like, yes, I want to go. And then I learned he was a musician. And I'm like, I want music lessons. My sister wants music lessons. You can give us music lessons, right? So I tell people that I never learned to play the piano, but I got the piano teacher.
You got the teacher. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that's how we met. We met at church. He's been there his whole life since he was, 2 months, I believe, 2 months old. And that's a story in itself as well.
Oh, that's funny. Erica, can you ask the one from Sister Moss? That's one of the, because that's something I meant to ask Ruth about while she was talking. There we go.
Yeah, I did. I did go to Bible school. I went to Indiana Bible College, and I graduated in 2002. I think I talked to Sister Leela about this. as an immigrant family working entry-level jobs, we didn't have money for college. I did do a year at Temple with loans. I had to pay international student rates. And so that we couldn't afford that. I remember walking through the campus and knowing that I had really good grades, but kind of walking around and saying, I don't belong here. What am I supposed to be doing? And just praying, what am I supposed to do? I've gone as far as I can, Lord, as far as my education goes. And then somebody from my church invited me to an open house at IBC, and she had a car. And I'm like, yes, I'm up for a road trip. I'm 18 years old. Yes. How far is it? 12 hours? I'll do it. But then she backed out. And she said, I can't go. And I'm like, what? So I took the Greyhound bus to Indianapolis, and I was like, I'm going to find out about this school. And I had never heard of it before, but I saw it as an opportunity. I was praying, asking God, what am I supposed to do? I'm 18, 19 years old. I can't afford college. What do you want for my life? And so there was a play on Esther that at the open house. And I'm like, I'm here for such a time as this, just the Lord just like.
That was your sign, right?
Yeah, the Lord just completely just showed me, yeah, this is it. This is what I want. And I was there for 3 years. They took my credits from Temple. I could afford it. I worked and then paid the semester ahead of time each time. So I'm thankful that I didn't have like college debt. And then the Lord worked it out. After I graduated, I went to Regent University online and got my master's in education and got a certification with Point Park University to be an elementary school teacher. So just God all the way, just like a non-alternative. Yeah, just a non-alternative way to make things happen. But it worked out.
Yeah, Ruth. So how do you think? I'm picking up so we don't jump off topic because as you're talking, I'm remembering things in our sort of pre-interview. But you mentioned a young lady who was only maybe 14 or 15 who was really excited about church and wanted to get the kids involved and would kind of assign you parts, that kind of thing. And that the expectation is that children would be involved in church, children would participate, children would serve.
Yeah.
How do you think that played into your perspective of church and your enthusiasm and excitement about being a part of the kingdom?
I just wanted to be a part. I feel like she took me seriously. Like she didn't, just because I was young, just because I was a child, didn't mean that I wasn't responsible or that I couldn't contribute. And so very much we were involved in plays and fundraising and fasting and all-night prayer meetings.
The kids were in all-night prayer meetings.
I wanted her to go to all-night prayer meetings so bad so I could stay up. And how
much prayer did you actually do?
Mom made the coffee. This Sunday school teacher that I'm telling you about, her mom made the coffee in the back of the church, and I remember we would pray, we would read our Bibles, we would sing some songs, we would have a coffee break, and then we would get home after a while. And just being a part of that has always stuck with me. I've never just the message that this is the best life that you can live came through loud and clear. And I was like, yes, absolutely. This is the life that I want. I remember when I went to college, when I went to Temple for a year and I had to take a class, where they question, if there's a God and all, everything is relative and all that. And I remember looking at the it wasn't a professor, it was like an assistant to a professor. I don't know what the term is called, but I remember looking at him and just being baffled by the things he was saying and what the people in my class were saying. And I just remember looking at him and thinking to myself, if what you believe gives you the life that you are living, I don't want to believe what you believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I don't want that life. There are sacred things. There are holy things.
That's right.
You know, so
Yeah,
yeah. So
there is truth and truth that doesn't move. Right. Mm-hmm. All right. That's right.
Yeah.
I didn't want to forget to piggyback on that because I remember that was a really good point. And, you know, one that I guess they have the gift to inspire people. Yeah, I mean, it is a really special thing. And to be able to instill in children that enthusiasm early, you know, that, you know, your time is now, you know, not just in the future, but God can use you now.
Yeah.
And to kind of instill that kind of enthusiasm in children from the get-go is, you know, that's a gift. So I was pretty impressed with that.
Yeah, I recently reconnected with her on Facebook, and I was like, you know, my heart just leaped. Like I never thought I would see her again or know about her again. And you know, she's a mother and she has children and she's still in Venezuela. She's still serving the Lord. And I'm like, I tell people about you, and she's like, get out of here, for real. And I'm like, yes, I know.
And that's what she doesn't even know what impact she had, right?
No, I don't really think she did.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Erica. Any more questions? I'm sorry, I hijacked you.
Yeah, okay. How do the UPC churches in Venezuela differ from the churches here in the US?
That's a good question. I think from a child perspective, again, because I was a child, the music was very different. You know, like I was used to acoustic guitars, like very fast music and like very happy, jumping sort of. I don't know if you've ever been to a Spanish service, but
I've seen.
Yeah. And so when we came to what we call American church, they clap differently. And I'm like, why are they clapping so slow?
What beat are they listening to?
So the music was different. At the time that I went to church, I don't think this is true now, but when I went to church in South America, literally you come into the church, we have wooden benches, acoustic guitars, the men sat on one side and the women sat on the other side. I don't know if that happened here in the UPC churches.
There are some.
Yep. So that was a couple of differences. Don't know if that have answered your question, Ken. Yeah.
Okay. What was the biggest culture shock for you when you came to the States, aside from the language barrier?
And besides the music.
Man. Are you sure I can't talk about the language? Aside from the cold, we came here in January of 1990. That's right. And let me tell you, when we came to the US, the place where we were staying, the bathroom that day wasn't working. The bathroom, there's 3 kids in the family, a mom and a dad, and the bathroom is not working. So there was around the corner from where we were staying, there were some guys that my dad worked with. My dad, I think he started working in construction with these guys. And we would have to like go and knock on the door. Like, I literally just need your bathroom. And I remember in this January cold, I remember like it was ungodly. Like I remember just like, please open this door. Please. Like I am frigid over here. So I think that was one of the biggest differences. The abundance of food was another thing that was like, wow, but that's a positive thing, right? Like I remember being in 4th grade, being like barely knowing English, and the fact that lunch was available to all the kids in the school. Like there was a thing called free lunch.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And to me, that was like, whoa. And I remember eating pizza, school pizza was the first pizza I ate. The first pizza I ever ate in my life was school pizza. And I remember people throwing food in the trash. And I was like,
what is wrong with these people?
why are you throwing pizza? You know, why are you throwing your lunch in the, like, that was inconceivable to me, because we were taught to conserve. And
Yeah,
yeah,
you knew what poverty was like.
yes. And so the food was another one. The cold, the food.
Wow.
And
in general, okay, coming from Venezuela, right, and to be in Philly, like into the city, like the city life, like I'm sure that was also culture shock.
Yeah, I was. I remember people just talking around me. I had no idea what they were saying. To me, English sounded, and I know this is the language piece, it sounded like people saying wash over and over again. Like wash. That's what English sounded like to me. And I'm like, I don't know what you guys are saying. Oh, another one, the free library, like having a free library, like somebody trusted me to take a book and bring it back. And there is thousands of books that you can just borrow, and nobody's going to charge you. Now, remember, my parents came here because we couldn't, in my 9-year-old mind, we couldn't afford my sister's school supplies because she was starting high school. And to know that there was a place that would trust you with their books and to bring them back, you know, the idea of knowledge and education and learning for yourself was a culture shock in a good way. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you just learn the language? You just picked up the language by just sort of getting thrown in? Was there anything like, how did you, because that's very scary to me to come to a place where I cannot communicate. So, I can't imagine what that's like to just be somewhere and everybody's Charlie Brown's teacher just want, you know. And so how did you learn the language?
Man, this is so crazy. So my sister had an easier time. You know, she was 12 and 13, and she had a bilingual teacher, and she was starting middle school. So she went to a different school than me and my brother. We went to elementary school. And we came here in January. So from January to June, I finished 4th grade. And then I remember my dad, and my dad is not the disciplinarian or the strict school guy. My mom is that. My mom is like, education, you know, do you do your homework, stuff like that. Not my dad. But I remember my dad getting us a composition book and saying, you cannot go outside and play until you have 10 words in Spanish with their meaning in English and a sentence for each. So that summer of 1990, we were just like absorbing, you know, like literally with the dictionary. That's how I learned the word complain.
Because you were complaining to your dad?
Because we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I was like, all right. I knew that great meant gran. Like I just knew. I was like, I don't know what that word means, because it's a cognate. You know, it looks very similar in English and in Spanish. But I remember writing the word complain and writing like quejarse, you know, the word, and then writing a sentence like I don't know what my sentence was. Probably something about my dad, right? But that kind of like systematic thing, and then music really helped, especially my sister. I remember Miss Miller, my 4th grade teacher. She knew how to say like hola. That's it. But you know what was so precious, and I'll never forget this again. Just the kindness of just normal, average people. She was my 4th grade teacher, Miss Miller, and she brought me up to her side in the classroom. And she gave me a pretzel. It was like a Friday pretzel day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're like a quarter. I don't know how much they are now, but and she gave me this pretzel, and she was like, "This is from our class," and I was like, you know, my class gave me a pretzel, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, the idea of a gift. You know, she was trying to
Yep.
show kindness and welcoming
Mm-hmm.
through food, which is a powerful way to welcome people.
Mm-hmm.
And so she gave me a pretzel on behalf of my class. And I was like, oh, thank you, you know, and yeah.
Oh,
And then ESL, you know, ESOL, by fifth grade, my teacher, Mr. Cohen, who I would love to find, Mr. Robert Cohen, by the end of fifth grade, he's like, I want you to stay here for regular class. I don't want you to go to your, you know, to your English learning class because I think that you're doing well, you know.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, so just a lot of people in and out of the church that have invested in my life, and I'm so grateful.
That's cool. All right, Erica.
Did you teach in public school, and do you homeschool now?
Good question. I taught 2 years at Ostos Charter School. It's a bilingual charter school. I taught second grade. I felt like I got my feet wet. And then I was 29 and we wanted to have a family. So I'm like, nope, I'm not working full time and doing this mom thing. So yeah. So after teaching 2 years, I stayed home and we had Samuel. And I taught my kids, I tried to really make a mental decision and like switch the gears in my head to just speak to them in Spanish. I was the best at it with Sam, with my oldest. Even though he didn't speak in Spanish to me until we came back from Colombia. That was the first time he spoke in Spanish to me. And I was like, whoa, this trip was worth it. You know, he's speaking in Spanish.
That immersion experience, right?
Yeah. And so I think I have homeschooled my kids, but not far into grade school because we found a school here in Philadelphia as a charter school. So it's a public charter school that has a full immersion program where my kids, like in kindergarten, they'll receive 90% of their instruction in Spanish. And then in first grade, 80%. In second grade, 70%. I think by fourth or fifth grade is 50-50. And we all know that, you know, we acquire language early on. So that's where my kids are now. And that's where I'm working part-time. We're helping second and third graders with Spanish reading support.
Got it. So it was important to you that your kids be bilingual. I know a lot of times immigrants come over and they lose their original language, or the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. It was very important. You know, I think I want my kids to be able to talk to my parents. I want my kids to be able to understand if they're in a Spanish service, you know. And you never know how God is going to use their language skills to help someone else, you know? So yeah, that's very, very important for us. So much so that we drive 1 hour to school because it's in Center City, Philadelphia. And we give ourselves an hour to get there. It's only 8 miles away, but it takes an hour during peak hours. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Oh, brother. Look who's asking a question.
You see it? Tell us about
when you saw the sun outside and thought it was warm out in January.
Okay, back to the cold, right? All right, so it's January. I come from hot weather, right? So we're looking outside our apartment, and I'm looking, and I'm like, there's white mosquitoes outside. I thought they were white mosquitoes, and it was snowing. Yes, it was snowing. And
white mosquitoes?
Yeah, I'm like, what? There's white mosquitoes? But it was snowflakes. I had never seen them before.
That's a new one.
Yep. And yeah, another time I remember, again, I saw the sun outside and I'm like, this is a great day to go play outside in a t-shirt. And I went out and I was like, no, I can't. And I like just came back inside. Me and the cold.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the cold is rude.
Yeah, the cold is hard.
Yeah,
it's very hard.
Even to adjust after all these years, cold is hard to adjust to.
Yes, even now, even it's still hard. Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry in advance. Tell us about the time you forgot your sermon notes and you had to preach in your Sunday school class.
Good. I'm glad you asked that, Steve, because I meant to ask that one too.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
Wait, and how old were you? Do you remember?
I had to be less than 9. So I had to be 7 or 8.
And
so back to this rockin' Sunday school teacher, right? So inspiring and like you're in charge of this. So there was one Sunday I was in charge of the preaching and I took it so seriously. I'm like, oh my word, like this is important. I cannot mess this up. And I remember going home and I don't know why, but I picked, I think it was Hebrews 4, where it talks about like the promises of God slipping away. It's like a warning, like beware that the promises of God don't slip away, something to that effect. And I have no idea what I wrote, right? Because I was a kid, but I wrote like this message and I was going to give it. And I put it in my parents' important papers bin. And I'm like, this is important. So it's going to go with the important papers.
Right.
Come Sunday, and I forgot my notes.
Ooh.
I worked on it so hard, and then I forgot my notes. And I remember just standing there and other kids looking at me because I'm supposed to preach. And I'm like, I don't even know what I said. I just like mumbled. I'm sure like she's like, all right, we're done with this part.
That's like a reoccurring nightmare of mine, but you just
Yes. So I never I'm extra prepared. Let's put it that way. I never forgot that feeling like, no, you have to be prepared.
You have to be. So Ruth, so let me ask you, I know you went to Bible school primarily or to IBC primarily because you could afford it and you wanted to get some education. But have you ever felt the call?
I sort of say like Mary, be it unto me according to thy word. Connected to IBC, and I shared this with you, Sister Leela. When I went to Bible school, I wrote it in my yearbook. I said, you guys have inspired me for life. Like I don't need to look anybody else, just to look anywhere else, just go through my yearbook and just see all the awesome people that I was around. And I remember one time at the altar during chapel, just feeling, like I don't belong here. I don't know if that's like a theme, like a immigrant child theme, like the belonging thing, or it's just a personality thing or something I struggle with. But I just remember pouring my heart to the Lord, like, what am I doing here? I don't consider myself a preacher, nothing like that. And being around all these awesome people can be very intimidating. Very talented people can be very intimidating. And so I was just really struggling with a lot of worthlessness, like unworthy sort of feelings. Yes. And I remember crying at chapel at the altar. And then I remember Kristen Ellis. She used to be Kristen Pasley Ellis. And she came over to me. It's the only time that it ever happened in the 3 years that I was there. She came over to me and she started praying with me the most beautiful things that my heart and my soul needed to hear. Just, you do belong here, God is going to use you. He has plans for you. That sort of thing. And I was like she was answering what I was telling the Lord. And I knew that it was God using her.
That's right.
And the full circle of this whole thing is that her church in Cincinnati, Ohio, from what I understand, that's where the missionaries from Venezuela came from. That was their home church.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that till years after I was in Bible school. And and I was like, God did see me. God does have a plan. God does. He knows where I am. And that was so powerful and comforting. And I told, I sent Kristen a little message about this. When they were installed as pastors, like, I'll never forget that prayer that you prayed for me at the altar, because it was completely the Lord using her.
Using her, let you know that he heard you. Absolutely. Yeah. All right, Erica, we are at the 8:01. Any pressing question, any good question in there, one that we can end on? Somebody see. I'll make Erica pick. Somebody's going to say, one. Overlook my question. It's not a good one.
Okay. Well, I usually try to get all the questions. That's like a goal I do, but there's a lot. Okay. I know with your daughter.
From Abby. Okay. Did I ever see Superbook and other Christian shows as a kid? I know Superbook is pretty new. And Christian shows as a kid, I don't know. I don't really remember any. I would say no, Abby.
See, Abby's like, wait a minute, what planet are you from?
I have one more.
Okay, go Erica.
My husband is so amazing, Ken, because he married me. No, because I think because he's always been yielded to the Lord. Yeah, I think that's why, because he wants to listen to his voice.
Hey, that's a pretty amazing person that does that. So then I'll have to agree with you. Right? That's good. All right. Well, we are at 8:02, and I hope you guys have enjoyed talking with Ruth this evening. I certainly have. And we probably could have gone on another hour. She got some pretty interesting stories to tell. But again, thank you all for joining us. Don't forget to go over to newarkupc.info. If you would like to receive our text notifications about messaging things, you can go to that contact card and leave us your information. You can view old messages on our media card. Again, if you want to learn about our children's services, that information is there also, where our kids meet online right now. So though we're not in-person service, we are still ministering to our children as well on Sundays. So drop over to Newark UPC and get everything that you need. Well, I am going to sign off tonight. Ruth, thank you so much for being with us. And
thank you,
we really
pleasure.
appreciate you. And we know that God's going to do great things, right? You have a place, and I know you're probably operating that now. And who knows what else God has in store coming up? But we definitely appreciate you and Steve. I'll put a plug in there. All right. All right. God bless you all, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. We will see you here again. This is tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Good night and God bless.